Welcome, everybody, to another Real Talk episode. Today, we're diving in digital world and through supply chain going digital. And I'm very proud to present with us today, Chintan Sutaria, the president and founder of CalcuQuote. Welcome, Chintan.
Thank you, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we can't wait to dive in digital. You're one of the companies coming in digitalizing supply chain, and I wanted to really understand what is CalcuQuote. And actually, before we get there, how are you? How is everything?
Things are good. I'm
Huh?
enjoying. It's getting cooler in Texas, so I can't complain about that. And it's nice to be talking to yourself and talking about digital things. So can't complain about that either.
Yeah, I mean, as we were the last 2 years, COVID has been behind us, and I think it's accelerated our digitalization to the point, not like we didn't have it all, the platforms there, we had it, and I think the pandemic just pushed us into it and quantified it 10x basically to where we are, and just like how we're communicating today to the digital world, it's fascinating that we can get a lot done virtually.
Yeah, absolutely. I think accelerated is the right term. Like it was already happening. Now it's just
Yeah.
happening faster.
Yeah, so I wanted to get a little background. Tell us a little about yourself. How did you get here? How did you get to CalcuQuote, and a little quick macro version of your background?
Yeah. How I got to CalcuQuote. Let's see. I'll start off, and I promise I won't make this part of it long. But my first job doing anything EMS related was when I was 11 years old. I got paid $1 an hour working for my dad. He had an EMS business, and so I was putting parts through a board. But it was basically a family business growing up. My second grade science project was how a PCB gets made, which is a weird thing for a second grader. So yeah, it was just the conversation at the dinner table kind of thing. Went through that. By the time I got to high school, my dad had this thing: you got to do every job in the company. So I've done everything from programming an SMT machine to running a wave solder machine and everything in between. So yeah,
Cross
I
training.
can't say
He
I'm good
taught
at
you
all of it.
early. He cross trained you
Yeah.
early. That's fascinating. I mean, honestly, I've never. That's awesome. Well, that really speaks louder than words for what we get into. But very good. So you started from there. Then where'd you go through that process through the manufacturing side?
Yeah. So yeah, after doing that growing up, I went into consulting for a while. So I was doing mostly business process consulting, working with systems, things like that. And then one day, again, got pulled back into the family business, and it was basically I went in there with the idea that okay, I'm going to try to bring business transformation. All right, so that the skills I'd learned working with multinational corporations and things like that, I wanted to bring that here. And one of the things that I'd worked on was this spreadsheet. It was like this uber crazy spreadsheet that would do quoting. And as my dad was, selling his business, the acquiring companies were very interested in this crazy spreadsheet that I had built.
Mhm.
So after all that was done, I went to the new management of the company and said, "Hey, we should turn this into something. Like I think this is cool." And it was important because I hated doing quotes. Like it was the most boring part of my day if I ever had to do it. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. We can turn this into a software. And they said, "No, but you should, because you've got the vision for it. And then call us when it's ready and we'll become your first customer." And that's what happened.
Oh wow! I mean, it is that quick story of how you saw a problem, and because you were in it, you experienced it, you saw the challenges through the process of the EMS side, quotation, even the manufacturing, the bill of materials, you did the quotes, you had customers coming in, you had hundreds of lines of bill of materials going through one by one. How to be automated? And back then we didn't have as much compute as we do today. So it was, building those little macros in Excel. Excel was the database and the macros. I know you're probably an Excel master, I would probably say. That's how you created it, and then you
Yeah.
could take it to the database format and into that process.
I,
So it's,
I like
yeah.
being called Excel master more than Excel nerd. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Excel master. No, you nerd out into Excel, then you become the master of Excel.
There you go.
That's how we go. That's how I get into it. Everybody thinks like, how do you get into this? I'm like, I nerded out on it, and then now I'm becoming more of an expert into, or master into this. Whatever hobby or business venture I get into. That's how we have curiosity, and your curiosity led you to where you are today, which is it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So very good. So you got into take us back for this. So you're in Texas currently, right?
Correct. I'm in a suburb of Dallas.
Oh, awesome. So is that where you've been for the last few years? I mean, is that where you've been living, or you live in other states?
No. So I mean, well, I guess it depends how far back you want to go, but I've
Yeah.
spent time living in LA.
Okay.
So I went to college there. And then I did consulting for a while, which means I was
Travel.
everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And then I actually went to go live in India for a year, just doing volunteer work, and then came back and traveled around again. But yeah, in CalcuQuote, this is kind of our headquarters, even though we have more people not in Dallas than in Dallas.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So coming back to that for the mission. So what was your mission when you started CalcuQuote? What is the mission of the value of the company?
Yeah. So I'll say we started off very broad, then got very specific, and then broad again. So when we started off, really the idea was I just wanted to solve problems for EMS companies. And so we really started off as more of a knowing what I knew, a consulting organization, a consulting product organization, right? So it was me meeting with EMS companies saying, what's your biggest problem? And by the way, I have this tool that I'm building for quoting. Would you like to check it out? And eventually the scales kind of tipped and we went from, okay, we're a consulting company plus a product company to we're a product company that helps solve a very specific problem for EMS companies around quoting. And then we've kind of broadened from there again because customers started coming to us and saying, okay, we'd like you to, since you do this so well, we'd like you to do this other thing that's related to it, right? So as on today, I'd say our mission is connecting the supply chain and
Mhm.
solving complex problems for our customers, which is EMS companies.
Yeah. EMS supply chain, as we all know today, we're in a supply chain crisis the last couple of years, and not just electronics, in all industries across the board. And I think digitalization right now is the, I would say previous is we weren't so digitalized in our processes, which make less communication points. Everything was more, I would say, analog based or manual, and has caused breaks in a lot of supply chains because of that. So, but moving into it, it's, what is the basis of CalcuQuote? What is it? How does it optimize manufacturing in general? What is the goal of that when you come into a company and you sell them this software or this solution? Because you're not a actual database, you're a design, you're pass through. You pass through data from one point to another. So can you explain to that a little bit how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the way I describe it is we're the mailman. Somebody else is writing the letter and somebody else is reading the letter, right? So we're just delivering the information. We're helping create that more connected supply chain that I kind of just mentioned earlier. The thing that we go in with CalcuQuote is we want to improve speed, accuracy, and efficiency. Those are kind of the three things that we focus on. And by speed, I mean how responsive you are to your customers. Accuracy is, I'll take an example here, like labor estimation is a big problem for EMS companies, right? Like how do you estimate the cost of assembly, not just the materials part of it? So there's a portion of CalcuQuote that addresses that. And then efficiency is how long does it take you to actually do the thing, whether it's creating purchase orders or getting a quote done or accessing data, like whatever it is, like how long does it take you to do that? So we try to solve all three of those. So the way CalcuQuote does that is a few things. One is we have everything is treated like a process. So if it's the RFQ process or the purchasing process, we think of it from, okay, what steps need to happen to go from an RFQ to a quote delivered back to a customer? And on the purchasing side, demand generated to purchase order acknowledged. And we look at each of those steps and figure out what's the most efficient way to conduct those. And that includes adding efficiency to the activity, but also improving coordination. So on the quoting side, for example, it's not enough to say, I can source these materials. That's a huge part of it. And that's what everybody focuses on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also say, we make sure that the BOM translates to the sourcing team and the BOM helps inform the labor estimation team, how many line items there are and that kind of stuff. So it's really connecting that whole process to be more efficient as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, through today, previously, as I know, your emphasis is for small and medium-sized manufacturers. Your software is built for, correct? To be that, I would say that vehicle to take transfer, be the mailman, I would say, to take from one side to the other side. And with distribution or with manufacturers and other distributors being more digital and having a lot more pathways of APIs as you would go through to be able to call, action, and pass through, it's really helped that time to quote from the time you get the project to quote. So How did you get into that? Did you guys do a lot of time studies? And before you built this, you did a lot of time studies of the transactions that it would take from the time the quote came in to the time you start quoting it, go through 100 line items of bill of materials. So you ask every supplier, what did they get the quotation back, and then create the proposal for the customer. So did you do a lot of time studies in that to see how do you eliminate that? And is that part of the way when you sell it to the customer that we can reduce this type of efficiency and speed?
Yeah. So fortunately, because from when we started and even now, it's such a paradigm shift in the amount of time it takes
Yeah.
that we don't even have to do a detailed time study. Like if you think about how long it takes to manually source a component, line by line, talking to multiple suppliers, being thorough and accurate and all of that stuff, like it's such a huge difference from that world to I click a button, it goes through my entire BOM, and I sit there and sip my coffee, and in 30 seconds I'm done,
Yeah.
right? So it's such a huge paradigm shift. I'll tell you a story here. Back in 2015, one of the first customers we had signed up, before they were a customer, they had this buyer and she was very skeptical, right? She's like, I don't understand this whole API thing. It's never heard of it. I'm not a technologist. I'm a buyer. And so how are you going to show me that this works? And I said, okay, we're going to take your bill of material, one that you're going to work on already, and we'll do a joint, you share your screen, I'll tell you where to click, you go through the whole application and you do a quote, right? And we go through that and it took about 20 minutes, right? And she kind of starts laughing and she goes, if you looked at my calendar right now, I have the rest of the day blocked to work on this quote. And we just did it in 20 minutes. So, and that's with me not knowing how to use the software and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So it's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah, I mean that speed of accuracy, because everything is now. It's the instant now of data transfer in the consumer life, business life, B2B, everything as it called the Amazon effect. We want it now. We want to press that button and get it instantly within seconds into right in front of us. And at our even the way we communicate. If I send you a message or send you an email or a text message, I expect that to get that response now, and it's a learned behavior. So it's all transcending to the business side. It's all learned behavior. Like we want, if I don't send you an email, I don't get a response in an hour. I'm like, what happened to him? Is he in a meeting? Did he not get it?
Yeah.
What's going
What
on?
happened? Yeah.
What happened, right? And so now just the customer, just like you being the vehicle to transfer that data, the customer's expectation to the EMS is that same way. Like here's a bill of materials or 500 items. We want it in 72 hours. You have 3 days. You give it to us, or we're going to place an order with them. Like they're like, all hands on deck. And sometimes you don't have a software, it's all hand on deck. A lot of companies, distributors and online, they have some of these ports you can do a lot of the materials, right? But it doesn't have the accuracy, as I said, to your system that puts it into the perfect mix with labor, part numbers, alternatives. You can really fill in and you don't have to, you can use as a pick and choose, but myself using it and practicing it, you can choose it. So I know you've created more modules. So how does the evolution of CalcuQuote started with, what are the you have different ports and different as I say, modules in CalcuQuote. So can you explain to us from the beginning of it to what you have now and the catalog of different available vehicles you have for the EMS companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, like I said, it was a quoting software. It was designed to be an end-to-end RFQ management system. The next the next module or software package that we came up with was ShopCQ. ShopCQ is a purchasing tool, so it takes you from demand generated to purchase order executed and now order status. And then now this is kind of the buzzword of the year kind of thing is going even more towards that. I want it now, I want it faster. So the next paradigm shift we're seeing is port CQ. And that is, imagine an e-store where you can put it on your website and customers can request a quote themselves. It'll be more of a self-service model, but you get an instant within seconds and minutes type of conversation instead of a hours and days, which is where quote CQ started, right? So if you think about the evolution, it went from a customer was expecting, okay, I'll get my quote response in a week or 2 weeks. And CalcuQuote comes along and says, well, you can actually do it in a day because now you've got all that information at your fingertips. Now it's a customer can say, I want it now. Okay, well, just go to our website. You can get your quote right now, upload your BOM. You're good to go.
Yeah, it's changed that whole experience because we have our customers the same way. Our OEM, they want it now. They want information. Can they upload it? Can they get the exact response? Stock available, especially in the supply chain disruption. Everybody wants to know availability. price is kind of out the door right now because of lead times, that supply and demand. As we always say, the most expensive item in your bill of materials is the item that you can't get, you don't have,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's priceless at that point, so, but overall, no matter how it looks like, there's a lot of manufacturing, a lot of projects. Now the startup companies, a lot of new technology with what's going on with, the 5G was there. Now the IoTs, the sensing, the EV, the medical, everybody's switching to the way we interact is all digital. So it needs to have components to communicate. Everything has to have a digital footprint to it. So it's increased the amount of components and semiconductors, especially, that are used. But as it going, so how did the pandemic affect CalcuQuote's business overall, and what did you see from the beginning to now, and what has it accelerated for you guys?
Yeah. Well, so when COVID first started, it's kind of funny because when it became real for me, and everybody's got their "this was the day it was real" story, right? For us, it was we went into the office over a weekend and emptied it out, right? And we said,
Wow.
okay, like we're going to be working from home for the foreseeable future. Let's empty the office out, right? So that was kind of the first. Oh, okay. Now we're going to have to really shift how we do business, right? So I remember like in early 2019 talking with our team. I was like, look, there's some unemployment was at 20% or something overnight. It was like a crazy world. And I remember talking to my team. I was like, look, we're going to get through this together. Like no one leaves unless we all leave, kind of thing, right? And we kind of buckled down. And it turns out it was the first wave of COVID, in terms of business changes for us, was people were going remote. And so when you're going remote, what do you need to still be productive? Because EMS companies were still in business, right? They were essential businesses. They were making ventilators and they were making hospital equipment and so on. And so what we did as the first wave was help support companies who had buyers that were going to be working remotely. And being a cloud-based software provider, it was so easy. All we had to say is forget any IT requirements, forget any of that stuff. Here's a website you can log in and you can get started right now. And that was huge. So we got kind of our first wave of growth through that. The second wave was, I think people at some point realized like the old way of doing business is not coming back anymore. And what I mean by that is the supplier rep that comes by and brings you donuts every week, and the long lunches where you're talking about the strategic whatever, right? Like that was going to happen, but it wasn't going to happen in the same format, at least for the foreseeable future. And so it became much more transaction focused than relationship focused. And of course, that's not going to completely go away in one direction or the other, right? Like people are still going to rely on those relationships, especially during this time, right? Like when allocations are happening and the market's so volatile, those relationships are really important. But there was a period where people said, okay, if I can't go meet with my customer face to face and build that relationship, then at least I can be very efficient for them. I can be easy to buy from. And that was kind of the second wave. And then I think the third wave is what we're going through right now, right? Is the shortages and the, I don't care what it costs, I need it now. It's that kind of stuff. It became kind of the third wave, which we saw a version of that back in 2018 with MLCC shortages. And now we're seeing a version of that now with everything.
A quantified version for the whole world of the supply chain.
Yeah. You can't buy sofas or parts.
No, as again, it's really transformed to that digitalization. But as you said, you hit a lot of points. It's because at the end of the day, is if we move remote, it's a new norm. We're evolving. We're moving forward. Yes, a pandemic caused us to really change and shift, but to be more efficient, to progress, and to really look outside the perspective. And a lot of companies, a lot of management, a lot of companies out there who didn't want to invest in this because they said, "Oh, if it doesn't work, let's not fix it." That's the old mentality. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Our business. But right now, what pandemic caused us, that it broke instantly. It's like everything was, and no one invested into that. So now everybody's trying to catch up to go digitalize, to have APIs, to have digital e-commerce. Especially a lot of companies were brick and mortar. They had a very light online presence. Everything was in store, but now like we have to shift. How do we shift? What is websites? How do we jump onto a platform that's based? And now everything's turnkey. There, you can buy a vehicle, any online vehicle is very turnkey. You just as a lipstick, or put the colors where you want, images, and there it is. You know, you can look.
There's a car vending machine down the highway from us here. You can literally go there and buy a car from a vending machine,
Wow.
which is the
That's the first
coolest.
time I heard that. Wow.
Oh yeah, I forgot what the company is called, but it's a tower. You can see it off the side of the highway, and they just have
Oh,
cars, and you just say, "I
Carvana.
want this one."
Carvana. That's Carvana.
Yes, that's
That's
the one.
Carvana.
Yes.
That's the new concept of that. It's all online digital. But I didn't know it's like, I thought there was actually people there because there's one dealership about 20 minutes from here. I've seen it, the whole big glass tower and the cars in it. I didn't know like you can go in there and just put in your credit card or put
That's
it
what
in.
I've heard. Yeah. I haven't bought a car from a vending machine. Yeah.
Well, it just brings back to the fun, like all the new, there's also car rental. I mean, we can get all, I mean, the digitalization is car rentals too. It's Turo. I think Turo is another car rental thing. You can go and just put on your app and go get, and there's no, in their place, there's no person that the system is doing it. That's how it's also transcending into our business, that it's all digital. The information is there. It's just to get the input to get the output, and connecting the parties together, and CalcuQuote being that connector, connecting the parties to get digitalizing, improving the speed, the transparency for EMS companies to really quantify the results. And at the end of the day, it wins on their end to be able to get more customers, more business, and more revenue on that. So that the part comes back to me. What's your question I have for you? What's your thoughts on the supply chain right now? Meaning, like, on the macro side, what do you think, the weaknesses that we have and the improvements now with digitalization, what is it still missing? Where do you think we need to go in the next 2 to say 5 years for companies to adjust in manufacturing to improve the supply chain and communication?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying, and this is something that we observed a few years
Uh-huh.
ago, right? Which is, if you look at our customer base, they've always preferred in stock versus not in stock, no
Okay.
matter the price. And I remember having a meeting. I was having a meeting with a distributor a while ago, and I mentioned that to him. I said, "Yeah, if you look at the selection criteria of our customer base, it's always, is there sufficient stock, and then let's talk about price." And I remember it was like an executive team that I was talking to, and they were all like, "Why are we talking about price so much then? Let's talk about what's on our shelves," right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think that there is an element of that in terms of where the supply chain is going in order to address that, because really it's friction at each point in the supply chain that
Correct.
causes stockouts, right? I think there's a couple things. One is we got to have more transparency in the supply chain, right? It helps to know what your distributor has. It helps to know what their suppliers have. It helps to know if there's going to be issues getting raw materials further upstream. It helps to know if there's going to be issues with, rare earth metals or whatever, right? So the more transparency we can create going up is good, but also going down. Because if I am, as an example, if I'm looking to quote something, then that's sometimes a good indicator if I look with a large enough data set, right? To say, oh, there is a higher demand for O201 parts this year than there was last year, because now people are building that into their designs.
Correct.
Whereas before it was nice in theory, but nobody was actually manufacturing parts that were O201, right? Like nobody was putting them on boards because it was, people didn't have SMT machines equipped for that. So those kinds of things I think are good indicators, and the more transparent we can be, the more everybody will benefit from it, because it's, now I can stock my shelves appropriately. Now you can get the advantage of me being more efficient in my inventory turnover and things like that. That's one part of it. The second part of it is, I think agility really matters,
Mhm.
because having the information, but then being able to turn on a dime is really important. And if you can do that, then you don't have to think 6 months into the future, 12 months into the future. You can think about next week and say, I'm about to run out of this part. I need more of it. And because I've been transparent in my communication up and down the supply chain, I know where I can get that from and how quickly I can bring it in. So the agility helps shorten the need for planning horizon. And then the transparency gives you a better view of that horizon.
Yeah, I mean the transparency is with data. Data is king. Data is Is it content is king? It's data. The data tells the story, and articulating that data and having systems that's clean data put in and allowing it to be transparent and move it around to be able to make better calculated decisions of how we're moving forward. Historical information, not just going by the seat of your pants sometimes, and that's what it goes. Oh, this item is being purchased a lot this time, but now the data can tell us the cycles, the seasons, what's happening, the seasonal thing. And I think a lot of smaller, I would say EMS and even OEMs didn't have that much data. They were just going per orders coming in. The tier ones, of course, they're built for that. They scale. They have all the analysts. They have all the information. But the smaller businesses don't. They don't have all the resources to be able to hire all those people, do an analysis on everything, to do the data. Some of them were just engineers that created a company or an EMS company and just started putting parts on a board for customers coming in, but they didn't really realize how much they should evolve. And I think it's a wake-up call for a lot of people to really invest into their systems, invest into their, not just their people, but into their systems, to be able to quantify that, to be able to really optimize the result, efficiencies, process, time, transparencies, everything you've been discussing for that. And I think that's a lot of things that I talk to a lot of our companies or customers these days. First thing I say is like, they have global, some of them are big 100 million, 200 million companies. You have global purchasing or global different US, you have US headquarters, Asia, Europe, but nobody talks to each other. Nobody, they have meetings, but the data is not connected. Like, oh, our US is disconnected with Asia or with South Asia. I'm like, so who's buying for who? And why isn't no centralized system? It's like, oh, we've been working for that, but we're still working off Excels. Even though we have SAP, we're still using Excels. And I get that a lot, and that is, yeah, it's, I know you, and I want to see what are the experiences that you've been hearing. I mean, I know you're dealing with all sizes of companies, but is that similar to what you're dealing with too?
Absolutely. I think one thing I would say is no matter how big of a company you are, you're probably dealing with data silos. We have customers that probably, they fall into that tier 1, tier 2 category of EMS companies. And we have customers that are small mom and pop shops, and they all deal with spreadsheets, right? I have this story, and I'll exclude certain details, but I went, this was back when I was in consulting, but this was a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company. And there was a report that the executive team relied on to figure out how, month to date, how they were doing. And the entire report was being generated using an Excel macro. And that was it. And it was like, well, how do you pull this information together? Like, oh yeah, you copy it from here to here, and then you import this spreadsheet. It was just like, wow, like this is it was like an $8 billion company and Excel. And the whole executive team relied on that as their single source of truth, which is, it happens in a lot of businesses. So I would definitely say it's a common enough problem of solving the data silos. The other thing I would say is with any company, getting teams to talk to each other requires a common platform, right? Like that's just like the tools have to be shared. And then everybody starts working together. It's really hard to say you're going to be on your tool and you're going to be on your tool. And then, by the way, guys, work together. The good news, though, is that I think that more modern softwares make that collaboration easier, even if they're on separate softwares, as long as they're seamlessly integrated. And that's one of the things that we always push is, we have customers that ask us, they say, oh, is CalcuQuote going to become an ERP system? And the answer is definitely no, right? Like we don't want to be in the ERP game. I joke that nobody ever likes their ERP, and I want to build software people like. So, that's an important thing. But the reason really is because the world is moving towards ecosystems of softwares, right? Like if you like HubSpot, use HubSpot as your CRM. If you like QuickBooks, use QuickBooks as your finance software. If you like Gusto, use that as your payroll software. But CalcuQuote does quoting and purchasing really well. Use that as your purchasing software. And we'll just bring it all together. And you might still have an ERP at the backbone of it all, but you're going to use best of breed solutions for each of those problems that you want to solve.
Well, I mean, I could not agree more with everything you said. From the silo based, even in our company, we have silo. Now we're improving that, just like you said, for communication platforms through collaboration. 2017, 18, I introduced the 365 platform through Teams. That was the infancy of Teams, and all it came through Skype. So we did that for more collaboration, create teams and create channels so people communicate on certain subject, customers, finance, warehouse, logistics, quoting, all these things that come. There's more collaboration. It's also, you can have all those systems, but also one thing is that it's the operational change management of the culture, of changing that culture. Of course, we can have all these fancy things, and like you said, you can bring on the best of breeds, the accounting software, the inventory software, the marketing CRM software, and today we could connect them all through APIs and integrations, which you can have multiple systems, but have one output. it can give you all the information at one output. But it comes to the understanding that for every input, there's an output, and it's having clean input, having the collaboration to be able to put that clean input to get the output to make those decisions, or what you want to do from pricing or quotations or finance or whatever it comes to be. And I mean, I'm honest to everybody, said, yeah, we have the same issue in our company. Our company has that issue. I think every company does. Doesn't matter the scale or the size. It's the culture that you change to be more forward thinking, higher level thinking, data focused, and that we all have to work together to input data in for the system, the compute, because compute is so cheap now. It can do, one petaflop is like $30,000-$40,000 now. I mean, that used to be $100 million 10 years ago. That's nothing. I mean, petaflop is like nothing.
And you're thinking about petaflops instead of,
Yeah.
a lower denomination of that, right? Like,
I mean, but that's what these systems in the cloud are doing. You're renting, it's cloud-based for nothing, for nothing, to use that system to compute and give it back to you. But of course, that petaflop goes to, I mean, you go much higher, but to the AI base, because these systems are smart, and these systems create algorithms and things that give you the output. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you said, it's because you hear it, you're dealing with the EMSs. You're, hands-on with the EMSs. We're more of a supplier base, but you're actually working inside their supply chains to help improve the efficiency. So I know you have a lot of stories about that, but you're sharing it to really what you see in the silo-based, the communication platforms, the ERP systems, and being able to really kind of guide them or consult them that, hey, this could be better. This could be better for you guys to do. Maybe you should go down this route.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on something important when you were talking about the teams and getting the silos and the cultural change. You definitely can't treat it as a technology problem only, right? It's not a data problem. It's a company problem. It's a culture problem. It's a people, process, technology, strategy, all of that wrapped into one. One of the and I'll draw an analogy here is when COVID first started, we were primarily a U.S. based team, right? We had a development team offshore, and we had a US team. After COVID started, now I think last time I checked, we have 9 different time zones. Like, we've grown globally, and so to try to keep that culture of one company, one team requires common tools, but it also requires a common language. It requires common objectives. It requires a common vision, right? Like, all of this stuff needs to come together. And that's really, like, when you go through a CalcuQuote onboarding, one of the things we try to emphasize is we're looking at this holistically. It's not about one person and their job. It's not about one tool and another tool. It's about the whole process. And how are we going to look at this holistically to make sure that we can bring your business to the next level? Because if we can't do that, then all we've done is replace, one tool with another, and that's not going to be value.
That, you nailed it right there, is guiding in that holistic process of, it's as I call it, the operational change management through digitalization, and changing that culture. And it's difficult for a lot of people, but it's to give perspective and have that aha moment. Oh, wow. But with anything, you have to put in the reps to make the change. People think they just want it done for them, but it's habit change. It's like, I got to put in the reps and exercise and practice and get that perfect. And it's going to become a habit that it'll actually make my life much easier. But that pivot of change, that pivot of the people change, the culture change is the thing of the digital transformation. But the systems are, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I was going to add that this question comes up, like, and this is how you can tell, right? Is it's so dependent on the company culture, because we see a case where, customers will ask us all the time, "Well, how long does it take to onboard to using CalcuQuote?" And my answer is always, well, it really depends more on you than on us, because we have customers that onboard in 4 hours, right? In 4 hours, they're up and running and doing quotes. And we have companies that take 6 months. And it's just, what's your appetite for change? How aligned are the people? Are they all seeing the same problem, or is this coming as a top-down decision? Like, all those factors play so much into it, to where, yeah, you have to start thinking about it holistically, right? Like, I can't give you an answer because I need to spend some time with your team first to see, are they going to look at this as an opportunity for improvement and treat it that way? Or is it going to be okay, there's a new tool I got to go learn. I'll do that in my free time.
Yeah, and that's because of time. It's inundated with information. And as we're all, we're all went through education, classes, school, and we go to class and we only learn about 30% of what the professor talks about. And then we leave and then we have to study more to really emphasize that. And it's the same thing with doing online training. It takes much more time. There are people that are more savvy because they understand, but the majority of people are not. Majority of people need time. And it's like, I need to teach you how to walk before you can run, and
Absolutely.
you cannot do that in one, as I said, hey, we can do this in 1 week. No, I think we'll teach you how to walk this and play this, exercise, practice it, and come back to us. Once you got that down, we'll go to the next step. And sometimes that's really where it comes to, because everybody, I guess, wants it now. Like, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I'm like, today we have a lot of time. We're not traveling as much, especially salespeople. We do much more time. But of course, I think it's we make ourselves busy work, busy time. But it's taking that time and that skill to learn. Is like, I'm a constant avenue of curiosity of learning things. Learning how things operate, how they work. Doesn't matter, from hobbies to business to everything I'm into. It's like keeping that curiosity. That curiosity keeps us young, and that curiosity comes from the culture of implementing learning and growth and process and digitalization of one of our objectives and goals for the company. So everybody sustains that, has that foundation, like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going to.
Yeah.
How
Well,
so?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say on the comment of like, when you get busy and you gotta like prioritize, I definitely think there is an element of you just gotta like work with the people as part of any kind of change effort. And when it comes to those types of things, I think you kind of said this, right? Is in theory, we do have more time now. We're not commuting to work as much, and there's more technology that makes us more efficient. My friends have heard me say this. If I ask them out for drinks or something, right, they'll say, "Oh, I'm busy." I'm like, "You've got the same 24 hours that Joe Biden and Beyonce and Barack Obama and Donald Trump and everybody has, right? Everybody's got the same 24 hours. It's just how are you spending it?"
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think it's really comes down to what you prioritize, and that really decides what you're going to do with your day.
So what is, I would say, what's on the future for CalcuQuote in general? What is the future? What's your roadmap ahead? What are you guys looking for, a year out, 2 or 5 year roadmap of really where you're taking your system? As I said, just like you had, Matt, we're not going to be an ERP system. We are going to stay in our lane and quantify that lane. So what's in the future roadmap for you guys?
Yeah. So one of the things, so I'll say two main things that are kind of in the near term for us, right? First is when you're talking about quoting and purchasing in the EMS space, one of the things that is really hard to do still, and it's still a little bit manual, which is why we can't get it down to seconds, is PCBs, right?
Yes.
To source a PCB is not an easy thing because there's all these complexities and things like that, and it's viewed by most as an insurmountable complexity. It's an insurmountable problem. It's not one that can be solved. And I disagree with that premise. I think that is a problem that can be solved because if you think about it, 10 years ago, nobody thought you can instantly see inventory online, right? But you can. You can see real-time information now. So same thing on the PCB side. I think there's opportunity there, and we've already got some really good progress. We just went live with our PCB global director, which is kind of our first step in that direction, is to highlight PCB vendors that can provide really fast service on quotes and then on delivery, because it's a thing that is becoming more and more relevant. So we just launched that a week ago, and we're now going to continue investing in that, making PCB companies more capable of providing instant quotes back to their customers.
Yeah, I mean,
So that's
to touch on that one, I just want to elaborate.
yeah,
I agree with you now. You actually just enlighten me a little bit, because they can, if they have data, that data from making all their previous historical data of how many PCs they made, all the intricacies, layering, size, whatever's materials, that data can be put into a system, a compute system that can give a budget estimary cost of how it would cost to be able to build this, this one board. And that problem can be solved to an estimation. There'll be a tolerance, but to an estimation
yeah.
that you can get some budgetary cost and put from the component side to the board cost that, hey, I have it here. And you're right, I think companies are probably aligning yourself are much more digital to use that data to be able to quantify it for those results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just yesterday, I was talking to our VP of product about this. Right, is if you think about all the data that is in a CAD file, and you combine that with all the data that's in a BOM, and you combine that with all the data that you can interpret from an email, and you combine that with all the data that we know about each of the components in the BOM, then all of a sudden you start to get a really good picture of what's that PCB going to look like. And for a human to take all of those pieces of information, because we're talking about millions of data points, okay, not possible. But for a computer to do it, much more possible. And a good example of that is we were working with our machine learning team here, and it was kind of a funny problem to solve, right? We said, can you take a part number and using machine learning and all of the data that's out there, generate a description about the part?
Okay.
And in like 90% of cases, they were able to come up with a description of the part just from the part number, which like part numbers are usually gibberish, right? But it was because I can look at all the history of how part numbering systems are done. And I can tell you this is an 0402, this is a capacitor, this has 5% tolerance, this has 1% tolerance, this is ceramic. Yeah, like you can do all kinds of cool stuff. And it's a computer. We don't even know how it worked. It just did. So
that's machine learning. I mean, that you go down the rabbit hole of that machine learning, the AI, and it is just getting smarter. But we're using it to our needs to improve the efficiency, to optimize what we need. And that's so you guys have a in-house machine learning tool?
Yeah, so one of the things actually worth mentioning here is, so during COVID, one of the things that we were working on was bringing in Elisa, which is now they're a majority owner of CalcuQuote, but they're a Finland-based company, and they have expertise in machine learning. That's how they got into this space to begin with. So this was like a strategic move for them and for CalcuQuote, because their machine learning capabilities run so deep that, I mean, they've been applying it to the telco space before machine learning was a term. And now they're applying it in really cool ways into factory automation, into MES systems, into supply chain. And that's how we got started. So the problem that I just described of generating a description, it took one of the data scientists less than a week to solve that problem.
Wow.
And so imagine if you gave them 6 months to work on it, right? And you can really fine tune that thing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I can see great partner, I mean, I can see where your mind was when they came and said, okay, we want to be a part of this venture and move forward with you guys to invest, because it just helps you that power, that compute, that experience could really help you quantify the company for the future ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to your original question, the other thing that, so the PCB side of it is one thing, and I do think there's a huge amount of opportunity there just to get the PCB industry being able to be faster, just like the EMS industry can be now. The second thing that comes to mind is we work with a lot of distributors, right? And the other thing is like digitalizing the distribution space, because especially in times like this, like you and I both know about this, right? Is people are looking for components, and it would be really nice for all distributors in the world to be able to share that information with their customers, so that a component anywhere in the world where it lives can be found and sourced. And so that's the other thing that we're working on, is digitalizing the distribution side, because that's the other bottleneck that EMS companies are facing. Is it's not enough for me to have 10 of my suppliers, 20 of my suppliers, 30 of my suppliers. I need all of my suppliers to be making their inventory available to me, so that I don't have to break my automated process to get the parts I need.
Yeah, that you are, hit the nail on the head. It's digitalizing that, putting it out there, at least having a place that there's systems. But I think digitalizing is one way, but I think, of course, the ERPs are there. What we're going to promote, their websites, the technology. I think right now, all companies, if you're not in this supply chain business, I mean, business is massive business growth in the last year in distribution, manufacturing. If they're not taking some of those proceeds and those that profits and reinvesting it into technology, because the market will shift, and the market shifts, it's going to be, they need to have that technology in place to be able to withstand the future and withstand downturns, to be efficient enough to show their data, put the information, put the products out there and work on it. Because pricing is one thing, but it's actually just showing the availability. Pricing could be manipulated. You don't have to show it. It's showing, hey, we have it on the shelf. We can solve this issue in downtime or issue, or it even comes to obsolescence. There's a lot of obsolescence out there, especially in the aerospace fields, defense and aerospace, is to get that information out there. Legacy products, and it's never going to, legacy products are huge. It's a multi-billion-dollar market because of the legacy of the products of, especially in aerospace defense products, that 20 years, 30 years ago technology, and they're still using it, and they have to,
Yeah.
so where does that live? Can we get that part? Can we put that project? So helping all areas of all sectors be able to improve the supply chain efficiency, process, turnaround time, and again, the quotation from sourcing quotation to the sales side, that cycle needs to increase,
Yeah.
and it's facing, it's funny is that the consumer cycle is very fast, but the back end cycle is much more complex, and it's a much slower process.
Yeah, well, and I think the consumer expectation of needing things faster is driving the B2B side of it, right? And in fact, like one of the things that we see as a future of the electronics space is that electronics manufacturers. The nice thing is there will always be a growing need of electronics. I don't think that's going to shrink. Like I can get electronics fitted jeans now, probably. I don't know. I don't own any, but I'm sure there's a wearable jeans out there
Um,
that, yeah. But I think one thing that is in the consumer behavior that might start to show itself in the B2B world is consumers, especially if you look at like the new generation of consumers that's coming, that's just now starting to develop disposable income. Environmental factors and things like that are going to become a bigger thing. So just having been in Europe recently, the amount of emphasis placed on valuing your environment is so huge that I think that's going to start to influence consumer behavior. They're going to look for more companies to have, environmental standards in their operations. They're going to look for more companies that demonstrate recyclability of their products and so on. So that's going to be built into the supply chain long term.
Yeah, I cannot agree more, because that is, I mean, Europe is a big, they are, as I said, they set the precedent a lot for the world for environmental precautions. We started back simple side for lead-free, RoHS, then now the REACH, and
Mhm.
just for the component end, there's a lot of others for energy and so, but that's, they started, renewable energy is big, and all the stuff for the EV pushes. And as I could bring up, as you guys know, I mean, if people haven't, it's China. China has this long-term vision. People think that they're cutting. I mean, they've now addressing that they're going to be energy efficient in the next by 2030 or 2035,
Yeah.
and they're going to cut power. They're going to cut
Yeah.
power to manufacturing. That's a big disruption now. It's like, okay, these factories working 24 hours a day. What's going to happen to them when they shut down? They cut the power in these provinces that are major, heavily manufacturing. But they will overcome it. Their point is that we're also going to be a leader. We don't want to be behind the ball. Yeah, their regime authoritarian. They can have a long-term vision because it's not changing every 48 years, especially in the States. Comes out steps in the States. So they're and people think, oh, this is just a gimmick. But I've been traveling to China for 25 plus years, and I can say is their vision long term. But they're helping. They want to be part of the goal. They want to be part of it. So politics aside, they care about their people too. They care about their people. They care about it. It's not just about the money and the aspect of power. It's about the people. And they want to be a power. They want to be a power play. So they're leading by example. They're following. They're following Europe. U.S. is having that, trying to debacle to politics a little bit. To that side. But it is a big thing that you brought up is the green initiatives. The green initiatives, climate change, everything that we are facing, as I know yourself faced in Texas this last year of the great Texas freeze.
Yes.
Texas freeze. So yeah, as we got off subject a little bit over there. So what are other things? What's the next? Any other things that you're working on that's you can share with us?
Yeah. So the other thing that I think is pretty cool. So I talked about the machine learning part of it, but I think the other really big thing is going to be there will be creations of marketplaces. And CalcuQuote's position on this is we don't want to try to control a marketplace. We want there to be marketplaces, right? Because it's good for suppliers, it's good for customers, and you see this already happening. If you think about the most valuable companies in the world right now, right? You think about Amazon, you think about Apple, you think about Google. Google is a advertising marketplace. Apple is an app marketplace. Amazon is a goods marketplace. Microsoft is a software marketplace, right? Like there are marketplaces that are happening, and those are creating the most valuable companies in the world because they create so much value for the world. And I think the creation of marketplaces in electronics is well overdue. In any other market that's mature, you see marketplaces, right? Insurance, there's marketplaces. Housing, there's marketplaces. Like all these places have marketplaces, and electronics is like, well, we're going to keep living in our silos. That's not going to last very long. So from our perspective, we don't care who does the marketplace. We want to enable a marketplace to be created. And that's the whole basis behind our supply chain connectedness is the more we allow those connections to happen, as long as we're agnostic about who you connect with, we don't care who you connect with, as long as you allow those connections to happen.
You'd be the vehicle to get to the marketplace, for the data to transfer to the marketplace. And you hit it, nailed it on the head. It's something I think I've talked about with your team with marketplace. Marketplace is a big thing, and it's the infancy of our. And I think all industries will be going to that, because it's funny. Shoppers want different. They want to have a place where they can make a decision. Oh, I like this one or this one. This same seller. I mean, Amazon does that. There are multiple sellers for the same product on Amazon. It's just like you want to choose where the price changes. The SaaS model has completely changed the world. The SaaS, so that is a big factor of, the kind of third party, people have made millions and millions of dollars working out of their homes, being just a third party shipper, That's just what it is. They're transferring data, showing data, they figured out digitalization, and that's just how it works, and they built a massive business off of it. It's funny, is my neighbor is doing that. My neighbor probably does $2 million a year. And he just did it as a hobby. He's in financial investments, and he just started it for fun. And he didn't realize, he's like, especially in COVID, he's like, I sell computers, and he's like, I don't even know why I'm doing this, but I can't stop because I'm an entrepreneur. I can't stop. And it's like, I don't even, I'm like, what? It's unbelievable.
And I think the concept of these like digital marketplaces seems scarier, but if you think about it, so I've got a friend who he was a consultant, right? And he started making smoothies, and they were really good smoothies. So he went to the local farmers market. He started selling smoothies, and he was selling them in a way that he was like, I can quit my day job and just sell smoothies at the local farmers market one day a week and still do fine, right? Which I was like, good for you, man. Like those are some good smoothies, and you can make a living off of it. That's great, right? But the point is, like, the idea of a farmer's marketplace, that's just an analog version of what we're talking about. And if you think about it, in a real marketplace or in a digital marketplace, everybody tends to rise. That's why they've been so popular in human history, right? There was town squares before there was internet, and still people did it. Why? Because it was mutually beneficial. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of marketplaces are the future. They make everybody more successful. Not participating in one just hurts you, hurts your customers, hurts your suppliers, hurts everyone.
Love it. Dude, that was like a bomb drop right there. You hit it, you nailed it on the head. Future thinking above, thinking outside the box. But so as one of my final questions I have for you, since you talk to a lot of these EMSs, I know you're really involved and integrated a lot of companies manufacturing or EMSs. What is your insights that you can share with us, supply chain, meaning like the delivery dates within lead times? Have you heard from your customers what's happening? What have you heard on the ground? What is your insights that you can share with us? Lead times and when this is going to end?
Man, if I knew that, right?
How long are we in this? How long are we in this, for supposedly? How long do you think we're in this, and what are you hearing from your customers?
So I'll start by saying, let me talk about the data, right? So the data says there's definitely more stock out positions today than there was a year ago, and even 6 months ago. So I think the number last time we pulled it, it was like, it used to be there was less than 10%. I think it was like 9% or something like that. I'll have to get the exact numbers, but it was like 9% of cases where you're looking for a part and it's not available. And that includes all kinds of scenarios. You have the wrong part number, it's an obsolete part number, or it's a valid part number, but it's out of stock. Today, it's like 28%, I think. So that's a big difference, right? So you can already start to see, and yeah, okay, 70% of the time parts are available, but that doesn't do you much good if you got 99 parts on a 100 line item BOM. What are you going to do? Ship it without the part? No. So I think that's definitely an issue. I think that we're on the tail end of it. And this is just me being an optimist here. But the reason I think we got ourselves into this mess is it's twofold, right? We had more demand than expected, and we had less supply than expected because of all the shutdowns and things like that with the COVID. So fortunately, the supply is catching up, right? Like people are going to start manufacturing, or they're already starting to manufacture. Like things are back into gear again. And so that means it's just a matter of time before we catch up. On the demand side is a different question. I think demand's going to keep rising. It's just a question of, can we invest fast enough in the manufacturing capabilities to keep up with and then surpass the demand? Because we have some catching up to do. I'm an optimist. I think we are maybe 6 months away from being back to a normal, but I see articles that say, we're in this for the long run, and 2 years out, you're not going to find a part. And I see people saying, oh, this is going to go away tomorrow. I don't think it's tomorrow, and I don't think it's 2 years out. If I had to guess, 6 months plus or minus 2. But that's my rough estimate with a bunch of qualifications.
No, I mean, you get into Q2, say Q2 of 2022, when you see some leveling out, or some breathing room of lead times, of bringing that reduction of lead times up 50 weeks right now. It's unfortunate, but you hit a lot of points. You're correct. Of course, you have the data. You've seen some of the data. 30% is massive. I mean, basically 2x from what it used to be, which is huge, for the no stock on the shelves. And you see it in grocery stores. You see it everywhere. And a lot of it, not just to the supply, it's through the supply chain, meaning like logistics is the problem. It's not just the factories. It's logistics. I mean, I wish this article.
There's no flights. Yeah.
Can't ship the parts. There's no flights. There's 66 ships sitting off of LA port or Long Beach port right now. The other challenges is workers being overworked. And there's a lot of variables, not just because of component. The wafer, TSMC, if you could give it the wafer, could give it to an OSAT. OSATs are having backups, but then the OSATs package it, and then they're waiting for, the OSATs want to, there's no lead frames, for example. Lead frames are low. Then you get into the process, and then you get into logistics, and it's like, okay, can't get the plane to get it here. These are all and that's what I say, it's not just one part of this. It's every part has a problem of lead time, extending that lead time to an unknown factor. And as inflation happens, it's challenging. As if my insight is, if governments keep spending, keep printing money, keep investing into architecture, we're going to be in this in a long run, because spending will be high. Spending is going to be high. Digitalization, everybody's home automation, communication tools, everybody renewing their things. The EV market, which is just taking off finally with all the companies coming, the demand they have, the capacity allocation they get for their components, the compute, cryptography, crypto is huge, the mining. So it's really infinite right now, which is great because technology should be moving that way. But when is it going to catch up? Because of even the big companies like Intel's want to build factories, but how fast can they build when they can't get the machines?
Yeah. It's going to take a while, right?
It takes a while, it takes a while. So yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic that it could be 2022. We see a reduction, but it just, I think, all depends on indirect factors, the global, another natural disaster, factory burning down, all the things that we've been dealing with, in this. So I'm optimistic that we're going to, I think will be 2x the spend in the next 5 years of what we spend today, meaning like the global spend of electronics. It'll probably be 2x by 2025, 2020, probably going to be 3x by next decade, because of the direction we're going, because everything is going to be, but of course, things, the longevity of technology and how fast we catch up with software's catching up with compute, vice versa, and being scalable for the average person to buy a product. These type of things that come in. But for my things, we're all in a great industry. I think that our industries of one of the largest.
Future is bright.
Future is bright, unknown industries that, and I have CalcuQuote being one of those vehicles to digitalize and help digitalization of supply chain and manufacturing is huge, because there's not a lot of players in this field that you're in. So there's only a very couple players, and you're one of them, and it's sky's the limit. So I wish you guys and your team the best of luck. Thank you, Chintan, for coming on. Do you have any? I always ask my people. Do you have any last words for the new generation? What can you say to the new generation out there? What you think they should do? What is it? What interest and what words of wisdom do you have?
Oh man. Okay, new generation. Because I have to remove myself. I used to think of myself as the new generation. So let's see. Now you're making me feel old. No, I think so. I work with some kids just in the community here as well, just as part of like mentorship and things like that. And one of the things I always tell people is pick a passion. These days it's so easy to look at the next new shiny thing and go pursue that. That's a short-term blip on the radar. You got to think about, what is my passion? And I'm going to dig in deep, because you can't become an expert on anything overnight. So, it's easy to look at something as an overnight success, but it's never an overnight success. So I say pick a passion and stick with it. And you'll have bad days and you'll have good days, but as long as it's trending positive, that's what you do. So yeah, I'm a big believer in you pick something and then you make it yours for a long, long period of time.
Lead by example, Chintan. Lead by example.
Yeah.
And you're a living example by example. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on the Real
Yeah.
Talk. I can't wait till we can catch up and work together more in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. It was good to
Thanks
see
a
you.
lot. Thanks a lot. And I'll see you soon.